Welcome to Car Design Academy, where we help aspiring designers master the skills and technology necessary to succeed as an automotive designer through live, online training, and personal mentoring. Today we're going to be sketching sports cars, and it goes without saying I love sketching sports cars. I'm sure for many of you that's one of your favorite things to sketch. We're going to be sketching a couple of different kinds of sports cars based on the drivetrain layout. We're going to sketch a front-engine GT, and we're going to sketch a mid-engine supercar. There's quite a few proportional differences between the two, so let's dive right into it. So, starting off with the front engine GT. I'm going to sketch my ground line. I'm going to sketch my 5 wheels. Sketching it in very lightly until I'm confident in the shape and proportion of the vehicle. Sports cars have very low ground clearance, so I'm going to draw my ground line well below the center of the wheel. And the overall height of the vehicle is going to be well below 2 wheels, 2 diameters. So what I like to do is I like to draw what's sort of like an egg shape, because the sports car typically has this very, very compact cabin area which envelops the occupant. And so I like to sketch that. I like to express that as sort of like this egg shape, which in this case I'm going to set it more towards the rear of the vehicle. I'm also going to sketch a line towards the center of the front wheel, and that's going to be where my windscreen is. And then I'm just going to start to sketch the center line profile of the vehicle. So it's going to swell up over the front wheel. It's going to swell up over the rear wheel just a little bit. And then we can start to introduce some very dynamic character lines. And give it this sort of shark nose silhouette to indicate performance. All of the character lines of the vehicle are really about emphasizing performance, and there's a lot of reference to nature in many sports cars in terms of animal anatomy. So they tend to have much bolder surfaces. Now, a GT sports car or a front engine sports car typically has a fairly long hood. Cabin is set to the rear, and it has what we call a very long dash to axle, which is the distance between the front door and the front wheel. So the length of the front fender is typically much longer than a typical vehicle. I'm going to draw some spokes to indicate the athleticism of the vehicle, the way it stands to the ground. Now let's contrast that with a mid-engine car, and let's say that they have generally the same wheelbase. So I'm going to just draw a couple of reference lines here to match the wheelbase. I'm going to draw my ground line. And I'm going to draw my 5 circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But this time my passenger cabin is going to be set much further forward because the engine is behind the occupants. This would be something like a McLaren or Ferrari or a Lamborghini. And keep the overall height of the vehicle well below 2 wheels. So it's more like 1.5 wheels in terms of overall height. And the highest point of the vehicle is relatively centered between the wheels. I'm going to draw some really dynamic fenders. Mid-engine car will typically have a bit more front overhang and a much shorter rear overhang. Since the engine is behind the occupants, there is typically a very large air intake somewhere on the side of the vehicle to allow air to pass through into the engine. And I'm drawing through the form. You can see how I'm aligning my character lines from the body side through the front end, right through the wheel, and that's just gets everything nice and aligned and flowing through really, really well. And for a really high performance sports car like this, you might introduce some aerodynamic elements like spoilers and wings and things like that, but don't overdo it. Those elements serve the function of helping the car stay on the road. We call that downforce. So you can see with the GT car, we have the cabin set to the rear because the engine is in the front. We have a very long hood or a bonnet. We have lots of what we call dash to axle, where the front door to the front wheel has a fairly long distance, again to indicate the power under the bonnet, the power of the engine. We have these very voluptuous sculpted fenders. We have a very, very sleek and low overall height, very low ground clearance. And for the mid-engine car, the cabin is set further forward. The occupant sits further forward, and that's because the engine is behind the occupant. We typically have a much more, we typically have some sort of air intake on the side in order to draw air into the engine. We have a fairly long front overhang, fairly short rear overhang, and more aerodynamic elements in order to help with the downforce as the vehicle is driving on the road. We want it to hug the corners. We want it to stick tight to the road so it doesn't slip off the road. And so these are some of the key proportional differences between front engine sports cars and mid-engine sports cars. If you're looking to take your car design career to the next level, you need a mentor who can show you the way. Go to www.CARDESIGN.ACADEMY and book a free discovery call. We can help you map out a strategy to master the skills and technology necessary to succeed as an automotive designer through live, online training, and personal mentoring. Whether you're just starting out on the journey or you're looking to level up, subscribe to our channel and be sure to follow us on Instagram at CARDESIGN.ACADEMY.